This video is going to talk about equations involving fractions. So the first thing that they want us to do is they want us to solve each equation by subtracting the same number from both sides. We've been doing this before. We have an unknown number plus 1, and we know that when we add 1 to that, we get 6. So when we take that 1 away from both sides, x is 5. You try the rest, and then we'll talk about it when you come back. Welcome back. So let's look at letter B. X plus 13 equals 17. So when you take away the 13 from both sides, you get x equals 4. 34 equals x plus 5. So when we take the 5 away from x, we know that 29 is the same thing as x. 12 plus x equals 44. Let's take 12 away from both sides, and x is going to be the same as 32. We can check these by going back and putting whatever x equals into the equation. 5 plus 1 equals 6. Checks out. We can replace n with any number and get a numerical expression. So n doesn't have to be a whole number. The variable could stand for a fraction, for a decimal, for a negative number. For example, if n equals 2/4 in that expression before, now if we know that n equals 2/4, that means that instead of n plus 1/4, we have 2/4 plus 1/4. And 2/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. Just like they're telling us right here. So what they want us to do in these expressions, is to replace n with 1/5. So you go ahead, try taking out the variable and putting 1/5 in. Pause the video and we'll talk about it when you come back. Welcome back. So let's go ahead and look at this. Instead of n plus 2/5, we have 1/5 plus 2/5. And 1/5 plus 2/5 is 3/5. Letter B, 4/5 minus n is actually 4/5 minus 1/5. And 4/5 minus 1/5 is 3/5. Letter C says 2 minus n. And instead of 2 minus n, it's going to be 2 minus 1/5. Now, we can't easily do 2 minus 1/5. We need to do that borrowing again. So 2 is going to become 1 and 5/5, because 5/5 means the same as 1 whole. So really we have 1 here and another whole here, which makes 2 minus 1/5. 1 minus nothing is just 1. 5/5 minus 1/5 is 4/5. So we have 1 and 4/5. Letter D, we have 1 plus n, or 1 plus 1/5. And if I have 1 and I'm adding 1/5 to it, that's just going to be 1 and 1/5. So they want us to replace the variable with the given numbers and then evaluate. So we have expressions here, and we have the value of the variable. Letter A says h plus 1 and 4/5. H is 3/5. So these are two different things here. We have what we're working on, and then kind of like the key to it. So let's rewrite this, but instead of h, we're going to put 3/5. 3/5 plus 1 and 4/5. So that means that I'm going to have 3/5 plus 4/5. That's going to be 7/5 with 1 whole in there as well, because we're also adding that 1 and there's nothing over here. Well, 7/5 is the same thing as saying 1 and 2/5. So I'm going to take out 1 and I'm going to have that 1 carry over into the 1 whole because that's another whole in there. It's like saying 1 5/5 plus 2/5, or 2 2/5. Go ahead and try B and C on your own, and when you come back, we'll talk about it. Welcome back. Letter B says x minus 1 1/4, and x is 2 3/4. So let's put in 2 3/4 minus 1 1/4, and you can see that I just replaced x with x equals 2 3/4. 3/4 minus 1/4 is 2/4, or 1/2 when you simplify it. 2 minus 1 is 1. So my final simplified answer is 1 1/2. If you got 1 2/4, don't stress about that. We'll get more practice simplifying. Letter C says 3 5/9 plus w, and w equals 1 7/9. So let's go ahead and solve that. 3 5/9 plus not w, but 1 7/9. 5/9 plus 7/9, well, 7 plus 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's going to be 12 over 9. 3 plus 1 is 4. So I have 4 12/9. That 12 over 9, if I take out my 1 whole, that 9, if I take 9 away from that and make it into a whole, that means that now I have 5 wholes and 3/9 left over. And if you're paying attention, you can see that we can simplify 3/9 by dividing by 3 over 3, so that makes it 5 1/3. So let's go ahead and let's look at this problem. We have 4 1/6 minus p, when p is 1 5/6. So 4 1/6 minus not p, but 1 5/6. Remember that I can't subtract 1 minus 5, so I'm going to have to borrow from that 4. So the 4 becomes a 3, and I'm going to add the denominator into the top. So now I have 3 7/6, which is improper, but it allows me to subtract 7/6 minus 5/6. 7/6 minus 5/6 is 2/6. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2/6, when you simplify by 2 over 2, becomes 2 1/3. Go ahead and try these problems on your own. Welcome back. So we have 5 1/3 minus 3 2/3, and we can't do 1/3 minus 2/3, so we're going to borrow from the 5, make it a 4, and add 3. So that'll be 4 4/3 minus 3 2/3. Really don't like those 3's, but whatever. 4/3 minus 2/3 is 2/3. 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 2/3. 2 2/5 minus 1 3/5. I can't do 2/5 minus 3/5, so I'm going to go ahead and borrow. That becomes 1 7/5 minus 1 3/5. 1 minus 1, that's going to be nothing, but 7/5 minus 3/5 is going to be 4/5. So we have Jennifer, who has some pizzas. Her friend brings another pizza. Now she has 3 pizzas altogether. How many pizzas did Jennifer have to start? We can solve an equation to answer this. So our equation is x plus 1 equals 3. X is the number of pizzas that Jennifer had, plus her friend's 1 equals 3 total. How do we solve this equation? Well, let's take away what the friend brought in. And when we take away what the friend brought in, that means Jennifer had 2 pizzas. Good for Jennifer. Sharing is caring. Now, Jennifer's mother cut one of the pizzas into 8 pieces and gave some of the pieces to Jennifer. Jennifer asked for one more piece, and her mother gave it to her. Jennifer now has 3 pieces of pizza. How many pieces did she have to start? So she cut one of the pizzas into 8 pieces. She gave some pieces to Jennifer. Who knows how many some is? Jennifer asked for one more piece. She didn't ask for one whole pizza. She asked for one more piece, or one piece, 1/8 of a pizza. How many pieces did she have to start? Well, remember that she now has 3 pieces of pizza. So she has 3/8 of a pizza. How do I figure out how many pieces Jennifer had to start? Well, I'm going to take that 1/8 of a slice, that 1/8 slice away from the 3/8 slices. So I'm going to subtract 1/8 from both sides. X equals 2/8. Jennifer had 2 pieces of pizza to start, or she had 1/4 of a pizza. So we can find the fraction of the whole pizza by solving an equation. Just like we subtracted 1 from both sides over here, the only difference between these two is that this is x plus 1 equals 3. This is x plus 1/8 equals 3/8. It's basically the same thing, but now we're talking about slices of pizza instead of whole pizzas. So we can see that Jennifer started with 2/8 of a whole pizza, just like we got. So they want us to solve each equation by subtracting the same number from both sides, just like we have before. And then they make sure to say to reduce our answer to lowest terms, which is the simplifying. So let's take a look at this. X plus 2/7 equals 5/7. Well, we know that something plus 2/7 equals 5/7, so let's subtract 2/7 from both sides. That means that x equals 3/7, because 5/7 minus 2/7 is 3/7. We can check that by putting 3/7 in for x. 3/7 plus 2/7 equals 5/7. Letter B says x plus 1/4 equals 3/4. So let's take the 1/4 away from x and take it away from both sides. Remember, that equation has to stay balanced. So now we have x equals 2/4. Or if we simplify by 2 over 2, x equals 1/2. For our lowest terms answer. Letter C, we know that the total is 7/8 when we take something and add 5/8 to it. So let's get rid of the 5/8 on both sides. That means that we have 7/8 minus 5/8. 7/8 minus 5/8 is 2/8, and that's equal to x, which should be down here, but I ran out of room. Except I circled 2/8. 2/8 is not in lowest terms. It's not in simplest form. Let's take that 2/8 and simplify by 2 over 2. They're both even, so I can simplify. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So 1/4 equals x for our final answer. Okay, go ahead and give these a shot. Now we're working with mixed numbers. Same thing, just now we're working with mixed numbers. Pay close attention to the sign so that you're using the inverse, or essentially the opposite, operation. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and look at letter A. X plus 1 3/7 equals 4 5/7. So to figure out what x is, we need to take away what we've added to it, minus 1 3/7 on both sides. And for that, we have x equals 5/7 minus 3/7 is 2/7. 4 minus 1 is 3. So our answer is 3 2/7. For letter B, we have 2 7/8 equals x plus 1 5/8. So if I'm adding 5/8 onto that, I want to subtract the 1 5/8 away from both sides. So that would mean that x equals 7/8 minus 5/8 is 2/8. 2 minus 1 is 1. 1 2/8. But don't forget that we're also going to simplify. So our actual answer is going to be 1 1/4 for x. Letter C. We have 3 2/5 equals x plus 3/5. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 3/5 from both sides. Except I can't do 2/5 minus 3/5, so I'm going to borrow. And this will become 2 7/5 minus 3/5. If you're wondering what I did there, remember I take the 3 and I take 1 away from it, and then I add how many makes a whole onto this fraction. 7/5 minus 3/5. That's not 2, I don't know. Fun times. Is 4/5, and 2 is just 2. So our answer is x equals 2 4/5. Letter D, x minus 3/5 equals 2 1/5. Well, we're subtracting something away from x to make 2 1/5. So to figure out what the total of x is, we're going to add 3/5 back onto it. Add 3/5 on both sides, and that means that x is equal to 2 1/5 plus 3/5 is 2 4/5. Final question, lots of room for it. 2 2/5 equals x 1/3. And now what we have here is we have a little bit more of a complicated problem. So to do this, I'm going to make sure that we don't get lost in all the other work, and I'm going to clear everything else off, because we have 2 2/5, and we're going to add 1/3 to both sides. But the denominators aren't the same, which means that when I take 2 2/5 plus the 1/3, just like I'm doing over here, but now over here, I need to get a common denominator. So I'm going to use the octagon for this. I'm going to take out 2/5 and multiply it by the other denominator, by 3/3. 2 times 3 is 6, 5 times 3 is 15. I'm going to take out 1/3, and I'm going to multiply it by the other denominator, 5/5. 1 times 5 is 5, 3 times 5 is 15. I'm going to bring down the whole numbers in the operation symbol so that 2 comes down, the plus sign comes down. Now I have 2 6/15 plus 5/15. And when I add that up, I'm going to get 2 11/15. Remember that 2 11/15 is not my answer, but equals x. 2 11/15 equals x is my answer. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have a fantastic rest of the day.